The 7 o'clock briefing at the Cutbank Meadows sub-district station never varied. Rourke ran it the same way every summer morning for as long as I'd worked under him. Coffee that tasted like it had been strained through an engine block, the wall map with its acetate overlay, the day's assignments read off a clipboard in the order the districts appeared on the topo, north to south, west to east, no exceptions. That predictability was the point. In the backcountry, predictability keeps people alive. So I noticed the gap the way you notice a missing stair in the dark. He went through Falls Creek, then Ivy Basin, then the Sheep-Eater Cutoff, then the Lamar Approach Trails. Then he skipped straight to the Pelican drainage assignments on the far side. Between Ivy Basin and Pelican, on the acetate, there was a wedge of the map maybe 11 miles across, a valley, the overlay labeled District 9, Grayling Fork, and he read nothing for it. No patrol, no trail inspection, no wildlife transect. His eyes passed over that section of the map, the way your tongue passes over the gap where a tooth used to be, without deciding to. Nobody said anything. 6 rangers in folding chairs, 3 of them with more than a decade in the park, and not one of them looked up. Marisol was writing her route in her field notebook. Dung was checking the batteries on his radio. Cooper, who transferred in from Sequoia the previous fall and still had that eager transfers habit of nodding at everything, was nodding at nothing. I'd been in Yellowstone 19 years. I'd worked Grayling Fork, or I thought I had. I could picture the trailhead, but I couldn't remember the last time anyone had been assigned there, and once I started reaching for that memory, it wasn't there to reach for. "What about 9?" I said. "Grayling Fork. We haven't run that transect since—" And I stopped, because I couldn't finish the sentence. I didn't have a date. The room went quiet in a way that a room full of professionals goes quiet. Not shocked, not startled. It was the quiet of people who had all independently decided at the same instant to keep looking at their own hands. Old Halverson was against the back wall. He wasn't even on the duty roster anymore. He came in for the coffee and the company. A fixture. 41 seasons. A man who had pulled more bodies out of that park than anyone living. He set his cup down on the windowsill, and he looked at me with something that I would spend the next 2 years trying to name. And he said, "You'll only go there once." Nobody laughed. Cooper stopped nodding, and Rourke, without any change in his voice at all, said, "Marisol, you've got the Lamar approach. Take the sat phone. The repeater's been flaky." And the briefing continued, north to south, west to east, as if a door had opened and closed so fast that only I had felt the draft. I want to be clear about something before I go further, because everything that follows depends on it. I was not a superstitious man. 19 years in that job scrubs superstition out of you. You learn that the mountains don't hate you and don't love you, that people die because of hypothermia and bad footing and dumb luck and math, and that the only thing standing between a family's worst day and their ordinary one is procedure. I believed in procedure the way other men believe in God. So when I tell you I went looking, understand that I went looking the way I'd been trained, slowly, on paper, building the case before I ever set foot on the ground. I stayed after the briefing and asked Rourke about District 9 directly. He was rinsing the coffee pot. He didn't turn around. "It's open," he said. "It's on the schedule." "It's not, though. You skipped it. It's a low-priority sector, light use. We rotate it when we've got the bodies." He set the pot in the rack. "Which we don't, this year. You know that." That was true, as far as it went. We were 3 rangers short of full staffing, same as every district in the park, same as every summer since the sequester years. It was a reasonable answer. It was, I realized later, the kind of answer that had been polished smooth by long use, a stone worn round by a river of people asking the same question and getting turned aside. "When's the last time anybody actually walked it?" I asked. Rourke dried his hands on the towel by the sink. "Take the sheep-eater cutoff today," he said. "Cooper's Green. I want a second on that route." And that was the end of it, except it wasn't, because he added, without looking at me, in a lower voice, almost kind, "Let it be, Dale. Some sectors, we just let them be." I should have let it be. I want that on the record, too. Instead, that night, in the little office off the equipment room where we did our reports, I pulled the patrol logs. Yellowstone's records are a mess of eras. There's the modern stuff, the digital incident management system, GPS tracks uploaded off the handheld Garmins, body camera footage that started coming in around 2015, dispatch logs in the CAD database. Under that, there's a strata of the paper years, the 70s through the 2000s, boxes of carbon copy patrol reports, and typed incident summaries stored in the archive building at Mammoth. And under that, the deep layer, the 50s and 60s, handwritten in cramped ledger hands, some of it never digitized at all. I started with what was easy. I pulled every GPS track filed for District 9 in the last 10 years. There were 41 of them. That surprised me. 41 patrols in a sector I couldn't remember anyone visiting. I opened them in the GIS software, expecting to see the trail. Grayling Fork ran a maintained path up the valley to a patrol cabin at the old Wicket Springs, a geothermal cluster, then a loop back down the ridge. Standard figure 8, maybe 14 miles. The tracks didn't show that. Every one of the 41 started at the Grayling trailhead. Everyone ended at the Grayling trailhead, and in between, they were smooth. Not smooth like a well-walked trail, smooth like a line drawn with a ruler. A GPS track from a person walking a mountain trail is a jittery thing, full of the little corrections of a body finding its footing, the 2-meter wander of the receiver under tree cover, the pauses where you stop to drink, or check a map, or watch an elk. These 41 tracks had none of that. They went up the valley in a clean arc, and came back down in another clean arc, and the total time elapsed, on every single one, was 6 hours and 40 minutes, not about. Exactly. 640, 41 times, filed by 14 different rangers over 10 years. I sat with that for a long time. Then I did the thing you're not supposed to do, which is pull your own records, because I'd started to feel the cold edge of a possibility I didn't like. I searched the tracks for my own name. There were 6. I did not remember filing 6 patrol tracks for District 9. I remembered filing none. But there they were, tied to my personnel number, 6 clean arcs, 6 times of 6 hours and 40 minutes, spread across 6 different summers going back to my 4th year in the park. That's when I stopped being a man asking a reasonable question and became something else. Cooper found me still there at 11. He'd come back for a charger and saw the light. He looked at my screen, at the tangle of tracks, and he said the thing that transfers say, the thing that comes from not yet knowing which questions cost you something. What's District 9? I keep seeing it on the map, but it's never on my sheet. You want the real answer or the answer people give you? He sat down. He was maybe 28, sharp, the kind of ranger who would either burn out in 3 years or run a park in 20. Real one. I don't know yet, I said, but I'm going to find out. And I could use somebody who wasn't around long enough to have learned not to look. He should have been smart enough to leave. To his credit and my lasting guilt, he wasn't. I gave him the easy work first, the work that doesn't cost you anything. Pull the maintenance records. Because that was the crack in the whole thing that I couldn't stop worrying at. A sector nobody visits shouldn't have a maintained trail. But the Grayling Trail was maintained. I'd seen the tracks start on it. I'd driven past the trailhead 100 times, and the sign was always fresh, the tread always clear. Somebody was doing the work. Trail crews don't work for free, and they don't work off the books. There would be a paper trail. There is always a paper trail. That's the first law of the Park Service. The money remembers even when the people forget. Cooper came back 2 days later with a face I recognized, because it was the face I'd been wearing since the briefing. So the maintenance records are all there, he said, sitting down heavily. District 9 gets funded every year. Trail crew, cabin upkeep, sign replacement, the works. There's work orders, there's completion reports, there's photos of the finished work, before and after geotagged. Okay, so somebody's doing it. That's the thing. He put a printout on the desk. The completion reports are signed off by the crew leads. I know 3 of these names: Peterson, Aoki, Reyes. So I asked them, just casual, at the maintenance compound, said I was doing a trail condition write-up for 9. He swallowed. None of them remember doing the work. Not vaguely. Peterson looked at his own signature on the completion report and told me it wasn't his handwriting. Except it was. I've seen him sign the equipment logs. It's his. He slid a second sheet across, a work order completion form. At the bottom, a photograph clipped to it. A newly cleared section of trail, fresh-cut logs stacked to the side, a crew of 4 in hard hats. Look at the crew photo, Cooper said quietly. I looked. 4 people. Peterson, I recognized. And the man on the far right, half turned away, was me. I was wearing a uniform I hadn't owned since they changed the shoulder patch design in 2011, and the work order was dated last August. You have to understand what a document like that does to a person in my line of work. Evidence is the ground I stood on. A GPS track, a timestamp, a geotagged photo. These are the things you take into a courtroom, the things that decide whether a lost hiker's death was misadventure or negligence, whether a poaching case holds. I had spent 19 years teaching younger rangers that the record does not lie, that memory is the unreliable witness and the document is the honest one. And now I was holding a document that could not be true, that contradicted a memory I trusted, and every instinct I had wanted to believe the paper over my own head. That, I would come to understand, was the mechanism, not fear, trust. It ran on our trust in our own procedures. I decided to do it the only way I knew how. I would go. I would walk District 9 with every recording instrument I could carry, cross-checked against instruments I couldn't tamper with, and I would come back with a record so redundant that no single lie could survive contact with all the others. I planned it like a search, handheld GPS on the belt, a second GPS, a backup Garmin, in the top of my pack, powered separately. Body camera. A voice recorder in my breast pocket, running audio only, that I would narrate into continuously. A film camera. Actual 35 millimeters, because film has to be developed by a lab that has no idea where the pictures came from and no reason to alter them. And because I'd started thinking sideways by then, a cheap disposable watch that I set against the atomic clock signal that morning and taped shut inside a Ziploc so I couldn't accidentally change it. I told Rourke I was taking a personal day to fish the Lamar. Cooper wanted to come. I told him no, and I meant it. And I'm glad he didn't argue, because at least one of the things that happened next only happened to me. I want to describe the walk honestly, because the honesty is the worst part. Nothing was wrong. The trailhead sign was fresh, the map under its plastic cover crisp. The trail was in beautiful condition, better than most in the park. The tread firm, the drainage bars clean, the brush cut back a full swing on either side. The forest was healthy, lodgepole with a good understory, no beetle kill, birdsong the whole way up. I saw a cow elk and 2 calves at the first meadow, and they behaved exactly as elk behave, watchful, unhurried, drifting off into the timber. My radio worked. I checked in with dispatch at the trailhead, and again at the 2-mile mark, and Sarah in dispatch was bored and normal and complained about the coffee. My GPS showed me climbing the valley just as the map said I should. The disposable watch, when I checked it, matched my wristwatch, matched the sun. I narrated the whole way. I have the audio. It's the most boring recording you will ever hear. 9:41, passing the first meadow, elk cow, and 2 calves 50 meters north. Moving off. No distress. Trail condition excellent. Feeling fine. Mile after mile of a man describing a pleasant hike in a beautiful place. I reached Wicket Springs a little after noon. The patrol cabin was there, in good repair. The springs steaming gently in their sinter terraces, the smell of sulfur and warm earth. I ate lunch on the cabin porch. I photographed everything with the film camera, calling out each shot to the recorder. Frame 12, cabin north elevation. Frame 13, spring cluster, main vent. I checked all 3 timepieces, noon something, all in agreement. I felt, if anything, foolish. I felt like a man who had built an elaborate trap and caught only a nice afternoon. I walked the loop back down the ridge. I reached the trailhead at 4:21 by my wristwatch, radioed in, drove home. Total elapsed time on my wristwatch, 6 hours and 41 minutes. The clean tracks had all said 6:40. I told myself the extra minute was the difference. I told myself I'd broken it. The GPS on my belt showed a smooth arc up the valley and a smooth arc back. No jitter, no pauses. 6 hours and 40 minutes. To the second. Not the 6:41 my wristwatch had counted. The backup Garmin in my pack, powered separately, never connected to the belt unit, showed the same smooth arc. Same duration. The body camera had recorded 4 hours and 11 minutes of footage across a span its own timestamp said was 6 hours and 40 minutes. The missing time wasn't at the start or the end. It was distributed, invisibly. The footage would show me walking, and then it would show me walking somewhere further up the trail. And there was no cut, no glitch, no jump you could see. But the timestamp had jumped, and the terrain had jumped with it. I watched myself climb the valley in a series of dissolves I hadn't perceived, each one swallowing a few minutes of my life. The voice recorder was continuous. 6 hours and 41 minutes of unbroken audio. My own voice, no gaps. But the words didn't match the pictures. On the audio at 1:14 in the afternoon, I say clearly, Frame 19, view east from the ridge saddle Pelican Valley in the distance. I am, by the audio, standing on the ridge, on the return loop. But the body camera timestamp at 1:14 shows me still at the cabin, on the porch, not yet started down. 2 instruments I carried on my own body, both continuous, both honest, describing me in 2 different places at the same instant. The film came back from the lab in Bozeman 10 days later. 24 exposures. 23 were exactly what I'd called out. Cabin, springs, trail, the elk. Ordinary, beautiful, mundane. Frame 21, which on the recorder I identify as view of the springs from the porch, afternoon light, was not the springs. It was a photograph of the cabin porch taken from the springs, looking back, the reverse angle. And on the porch, sitting in the chair where I had eaten my lunch, was a man in a ranger uniform, looking directly at the camera. I know every ranger in that park. I have known most of them for 2 decades. I did not know him, and his uniform had the old shoulder patch, the pre-2011 one, the same as the man in Peterson's crew photo who had my face. I want to slow down here, because this is the point at which a person either turns around or doesn't, and I've thought a great deal about why I didn't. It wasn't courage. I'd like to say it was, but it wasn't. It was that the alternative to understanding was worse. If I stopped, I would have to live the rest of my life carrying 6 patrols I couldn't remember, and a photograph of a stranger in my chair, and I would have to walk into that briefing room every morning and be one of the people looking at their own hands. Halverson's face at the briefing. I finally had a name for it. It was the face of a man who had chosen the not knowing and found out it doesn't protect you. It just leaves you alone with it. So I went to see Halverson. He lived in Gardiner, in a small house with a big woodpile, 41 seasons of pension, and a wife 3 years in the ground. He knew why I'd come before I sat down. He put coffee in front of me and he said, "You went." I went. "And you brought instruments?" not a question. He almost smiled. We all bring instruments. The ones who go looking, first thing you think of, beat the lie with more machines. He turned his cup slowly on the table. It's a good instinct. It's the right instinct. It just doesn't work, because the lie isn't in the machines. The machines are honest. That's what makes it unbearable. I told him everything. The tracks, the maintenance records, Peterson's signature that wasn't his. The photograph. He listened the way a good ranger listens to a witness without interrupting, and when I finished he got up and went to a closet and came back with a cardboard box, soft at the corners with age. I took this when I retired, he said. You're not supposed to. There's a procedure for it, the archive stuff, chain of custody. I don't care anymore. He set it down. You want to know how far back it goes? Everybody wants to know how far back it goes. The box was full of paper. The top layer I recognized as photocopies from the Mammoth archive, typed incident reports from the 60s and 70s, the old letterhead. Under that, older, the ledger sheets, handwritten, and on every one, every patrol report, every incident summary, every wildlife log that touched District 9. There was a notation at the bottom, in the same 9 words, in a hand that never changed across 60 years of different papers and different eras and different ink. Area remains operational. Personnel memory corrected. Nobody knows who writes it, Halverson said. I asked for 30 years. It's not a stamp. Look close, it's written. Everyone a little different. The way a hand varies. But it's the same hand in 1961 and 1994. I checked it against the personnel who filed the reports. It's never their handwriting. It just appears after the report is filed, before it's archived, in that window. Nobody's ever caught it happening. I turned through them. The dread I felt was not the sharp kind. It was the slow kind, the kind that comes from a pattern too large to be a mistake. 60 years of rangers walking into that valley and coming back with clean arcs and missing hours and honest instruments that disagreed with each other. 60 years of the same 9 words appearing in the same impossible hand. The photograph, I said. The man on the porch, the old patch. Peterson's crew photo has me in it, wearing the old patch. Halverson nodded slowly. You've seen him then, or one of them. He rubbed his face. There's a thing we don't say out loud. The people who go looking, the ones who bring instruments and don't stop. We start showing up in the records, in the maintenance photos, in the crew shots, wearing whatever the uniform was in whatever year the records dated, doesn't matter. Could be a year before you were born. Like the valley's got a roster of its own, and it just adds you to it. Once you've been. Once you've really been. Not the 640 tourists. The ones who look. The 41 clean tracks, I said. The ones that aren't real patrols. Those are the letting be, he said. People who got assigned went. Felt the 6 hours and 40 minutes was a nice walk, came back, filed the clean track, never checked it against anything. The valley likes those. Those are easy. It hands you 6 hours and 40 minutes of nice and takes the rest and writes, memory corrected at the bottom, and you never know. Most people never know. That's the mercy in it. If you want to call it that. I did not want to call it mercy. I went to the archive. The Heritage and Research Center at Gardner is a real place, climate-controlled, professional, run by archivists who take their jobs seriously and had no idea what I was actually after. I told them I was compiling a historical patrol density study for District 9, a plausible thing, the kind of retrospective a senior ranger might do. They gave me a reading room and a cart. I spent 19 days there, on my own time, across the back half of that summer, and the pattern that assembled itself was worse than the notation, because the notation was just words, and this was structure. District 9 had not always been District 9. Before 1968, it wasn't a numbered sector at all. It was carried in the records as an unassigned management inclusion, a bureaucratic term I'd never encountered, referenced in budget documents but absent from patrol schedules. In 1968, there was a reorganization, and it became District 9. And the reorganization memo, I found it, a carbon copy, the ink gone brown, contained a paragraph that had been typed and then struck through with a single line, still legible underneath. Sector 9, Grayling Fork, to be carried as a standing operational district for budgetary and cartographic continuity. Field assignment to remain at superintendent's discretion. Reference prior incident file. Do not consolidate. Reference prior incident file. I asked for it. It took the archivist 2 days to locate, because it was cross-filed under a case number that didn't match its contents. It was a search and rescue file from October 1961. A party of 4 surveyors, contracted to update the trail maps of the Grayling drainage, had gone in on a Tuesday and not come out. A SAR operation had been mounted. The file was thick with it. Dispatch logs, volunteer rosters, the whole apparatus of a full search. The searchers found the surveyor's camp intact. Bedrolls, a coffee pot, a survey transit on its tripod pointed up the valley. No sign of struggle, no bodies, then or ever. But the file's summary, typed by the incident commander, contained a sentence that stopped my breath. Recovered from the transit's field book. Mapping entries, dated October 14th to 19th. Continuing 4 days beyond the party's disappearance on the 11th, in the hand of Survey Chief M. Wickett, describing terrain features not present in the drainage. Wickett Springs. The cabin where I'd eaten my lunch was named for a man who had disappeared into that valley in 1961 and gone on mapping it, in his own hand, for 4 days after he vanished. I found his photograph in the personnel file. Survey Chief Marcus Wickett, 1961. He was the man on the porch, the man in my frame, 21, wearing in my photograph taken last summer a ranger uniform he had never in his life owned, with a shoulder patch that wouldn't be designed for another 40 years. I need to tell you about the day I understood that the institution knew. Not knew the way a person knows, knew the way a body knows to pull its hand off a stove. A reflex older than thought, distributed through 1,000 small procedures nobody could quite explain if you asked them. I'd been assembling my case for months. I had the tracks, the maintenance fraud, the photographs, The 1961 file, the reorg memo, Halverson's box. I decided to do the thing I believed in. I would report it up the chain, formally, with evidence, the way you're trained to report anything you can't handle at your level. I wrote it up, 40 pages, every document referenced, every contradiction laid out. I titled it, A Backcountry Operational Anomaly Report, gave it an incident classification, and I walked it into the Chief Ranger's office at Mammoth myself, in person, because I didn't trust it to the system. The Chief Ranger was a woman named Aldous, career service, sharp, fair, someone I respected. She read the whole thing while I sat there. It took her 40 minutes. She didn't ask a single question as she read. When she finished, she squared the pages, set them down, and looked at me for a while. "How long have you been in the park, Dale?" 19 years. "And you've never had cause to fill out one of these before? On this sector?" "No." She nodded slowly, as if that confirmed something. She opened a drawer in her desk, not a file drawer, the shallow center drawer where you keep pens, and she took out a single laminated card, worn at the edges, and she read from it without any drama at all, the way you'd read a boilerplate safety notice. "Reports concerning Sector 9 operational anomalies are to be received, classified, and archived without field action. The reporting employee is to be commended for diligence and returned to normal duty. No investigative resources are to be assigned. This directive is not to be reproduced or discussed. It has no author of record and no date of issue." She put the card back in the drawer. "That card was in this desk when I got it," she said. "It was in the desk when my predecessor got it. Nobody wrote it. Everybody follows it." She wasn't cold about it. If anything, she looked tired and a little sorry. "I'm not going to punish you. There's no punishment in the procedure. You're commended for diligence. That's real. It goes in your file. It's good for you. And then you go back to work." "That's it. That's it." She stood, which meant we were done. But at the door she said the same thing Rourke had said. The thing I was starting to understand was itself part of the procedure, passed hand to hand like a survival skill. "Let it be, Dale. It's not a thing you fix. It's a thing you carry, and the people who carry it quietest carry it best. I want to be careful in what remains, not to claim I understand more than I do. I don't. What I have is the shape of it, felt from the outside, the way you can feel the shape of something under a sheet. Here is what I think is true. There is a place in Yellowstone that does not keep time or space, the way the rest of the world does, and it has been there longer than the Park Service, longer than the surveyors, longer than the notation. The institution did not create it, and cannot close it. What the institution did, what generations of quiet, professional people did, one adaptation at a time, was build a set of procedures around it, the way you'd build a fence around a sinkhole you couldn't fill. Keep it funded, so the budget doesn't flag a hole. Keep it on the maps, so its absence doesn't draw the eye. Keep it staffed on paper, so no auditor ever asks why a whole district goes unpatrolled. And keep the people away, gently, without ever writing down why, because the one thing worse than the place is a written record of the place that some ambitious young ranger might someday try to verify. The clean 6-hour 40 tracks are the fence working. The 9 words are the fence working. The men on the porch in the old uniforms are the cost of the fence. The ones who leaned over the edge to look and got taken into whatever inventory that valley keeps, added to a roster that pays no attention to when a man was born or when a patch was designed. Wicket went first in 1961 and kept mapping. I don't know how many followed. I know I'm in the maintenance photos now. I know that if you developed the right roll of film in the right year, you might find me on that porch, watching the trail, waiting for the next one who looks. I did not go back, not once. I finished my career, 6 more years, good years, mostly. I trained a dozen new rangers. When one of them asked about District 9, I did what had been done to me. I told them to let it be, and I watched to see whether they were the letting be kind or the looking kind, and I prayed each time that they were the former. Cooper transferred to Denali the next spring. I never told him the rest of what I found. Some kindnesses are just silences you can afford. Halverson died the winter after I retired. His daughter mailed me the box. This is the last thing, and it's the thing that made me write all this down. 6 months ago, a former colleague, someone still inside, someone who knew what I'd looked for once, sent me an updated deployment database, the current operational districts for the whole park. She sent it without a note, which was itself a kind of note. District 9 is gone. Not merged, not renamed. Grayling Fork is simply, cleanly, a normal part of the Pelican management area now, patrolled on the ordinary rotation, and when I pulled recent tracks for it, they were jittery and human and various, 6 hours or 4 or 9, real walks by real people who felt nothing and saw nothing and came home. The fence is gone, because whatever it fenced is gone from there. It's somewhere else now. In the current database, there's a new operational section on the far southwest side of the park, in country that used to be carried as trailless wilderness. Different coordinates, different designation. It's Sector 14 now. And in the administrative notes field, in the plain gray boilerplate where a database keeps its housekeeping text, there is one line, and I recognized it before I finished reading it, the way you recognize a hand. Personnel assigned after relocation should not be informed until after their first patrol. I sat with that for a long time, and then because I am what 19 years made me, I did the last diligent thing. I logged into the retiree portal, the one that lets you view your own service record, and I pulled my employment history, the official one, the one that follows you, the one that's supposed to be more honest than memory. It says I worked Sector 9, Grayling Fork, for 6 consecutive summers. Not 6 patrols, 6 summers, assigned full season, in residence at the Wicket Springs cabin, June through September, 6 years running. I remember entering that valley one time, one day, 6 hours and 41 minutes, by a watch I taped inside a bag so I couldn't change it. The record says 6 summers, and the record does not lie. I taught that to a dozen people. I believed it my whole life, and I understand now that this was never the reassurance I thought it was, because if the record is the honest one, then the man who walked out of that valley believing he'd been there once is the unreliable witness, and somewhere in the archive, in a hand that never changes, someone has already written the 9 words underneath me. If you're reading this because you took the job, and you've been to your briefing, and you noticed the gap on the map where the supervisor's eyes slid past, the section that's funded and mapped and never assigned, then I'm going to tell you the only true thing I have. The thing Halverson tried to tell me, and I was too much myself to hear. You'll only go there once. The rest of the times, you won't remember, and the record will. Let it be.